All right. Hey, and welcome to the show, Victoria. How are you today?
I am good. How are you?
Good. Can't complain. Never do, anyways. It doesn't help me a whole lot, so I just kind of move past it, right?
Makes sense. Yeah.
All right. So, I did a whole introduction. I typically try to do those introductions before I even start the show. That way I can kind of get all that stuff knocked out. That's why I send them to you for your approval. So, uh,
Oh,
but but welcome to the show, man. Like I've been following you on Facebook and I think maybe Instagram primarily because we're both Shaw Sexual Health Alliance people, and for me. What I really want to do with my show is there's a lot of sex therapists that are not Shaw, and I really want to bring some Shaw folks out into the atmosphere so that the Shaw program, sex educators, sex coaches, and sex therapists, like get a lot more name recognition. So I'm really happy you decided to join me.
yeah.
Um, I think I usually send out a list of questions, and I got to be honest with you. I know I send these questions out, but I don't always follow questions, man. Like honestly, I'm pretty just let's flow, let's see how the nature goes, and see how it goes and stuff like that. But one thing that I am very very interested in is the work that you did with advocating with sex trafficking and things like that, because I am a staunch supporter of the decriminalization of sex work movement. And so for me, I am fully on board with getting rid of sex trafficking, but I'm also fully on board with advocating for voluntary sex workers, right? People who do this,
Sure.
because I think that the only way that we are going to do a whole lot with sex trafficking is to get the sex workers on our side because they are valuable. But anyway,
For sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, my work in the advocacy side kind of happened accidentally, actually. I always tell people that because it's really the truth. One thing that's not a secret at all is that I actually am a survivor of human trafficking, both domestically and internationally. And I was trafficked when I was young and then into early adulthood. And this was during a time when there wasn't any conversation about it happening. In our government, nobody will be surprised by this, but in the United States, there was a lot of uh, thoughts around like, oh, does this happen here? Is that real? Like that, oh, that happens in Thailand. Oh, that happens in India. And I'm like, yeah, that's a really awesome perspective, except that it's happening everywhere. And that lack of education, I think, is what causes a lot of vulnerability, unfortunately. Um,
absolutely. And like I live in the Maritimes or in Atlantic Canada, and it's one of the biggest places in Canada that young girls and young boys like get trafficked, or they I guess they take them from here and traffic them in bigger cities like Toronto and BC and Vancouver and places like that. So I get it. So anyway, sorry, did not mean to interrupt. I just brain
yeah.
fart sometimes.
So what happened was I was a survivor. I was just out of the life, and I
Hmm.
was starting to name what was happening to me before. They were starting. This was in the early 2000s, so they were starting. The government was starting to pretend like they cared a lot about it,
Hmm.
and there was this uprising of evangelical Christians that were starting to care about it at the same time.
Hmm.
Uh, and so at the very same time, I was kind of looking around and seeing a lot of my friends that were still in need of help, who were going to like housing solution centers and like being turned away. And they were, all the resources just weren't ready and prepared to help with them. And I'm the kind of person where when I see a problem, I get curious about it and then I start challenging people. I'm pretty direct. So I kind of started kicking down doors a little bit and starting with law enforcement actually and just being like, so why are you criminalizing survivors? Why are you criminalizing the actual victims here? At that time, it was even children. Like they were putting kids into juvie to give them a placeholder.
Hmm.
I figured out what to do with them, and I got to meet with a lot of these kids over the time building this organization. But it started really with just education, like going into being like, okay, well, maybe they don't know, maybe they need more
Hmm.
education, maybe it's a funding issue, because that's always the excuse on everything. And I went and I joined with a couple of friends, and we just started doing trainings for law enforcement and just in our little area, and nonprofits. And I was very young at this time. I was like 19, 20. So I was still very idealistic. I was still very like, they just need the information and then they'll do the thing. And I got to learn through that process that that's just not true. Because when they had the information, there were a lot of systemic things that were getting in the way. Some of it was fear, some of it was biases, some of it was just the fact that they didn't have the ability to change policy. Some of it is legislative, right? So that takes a lot longer. Um, and yeah, it started off educationally, and then when we saw that the nonprofit actually be doing the things we hoped, we were like, all right, we need to become a service oriented agency, and so we did. Um, and did that for about 14 years. And unfortunately, over those years, I unfortunately, I suppose, I became really fierce about the rights of survivors of all ages, of all genders, all backgrounds. And over the years, at the same time of my kind of ferocity that was really building and building in that, I just saw a nonprofit organization that was turning more conservative and more conservative, unfortunately, and really hiding behind this kind of feel of sex fear,
Yeah.
non-positivity. We see all that kind of stuff as sex therapists.
Hmm.
And eventually I just had to step away. And that's actually what moved me into the direction of eventually becoming a sex therapist.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and it's really easy when we focus on as humans, like we tend to focus on the negative aspect of things. That's just kind of the human brain, right? Because like I equate that to evolution, right? When I'm a hunter gatherer trying to fight off like saber tooth tigers and stuff like that, being cheerful and optimistic is not really all that helpful. Unfortunately, now we live in a society where we do need to be able to recognize both the negative and the positive of things, and so it does. Unfortunately, it does like especially in the Western Hemisphere, right? Like that we are very religious oriented, and so there's a lot of sexual shame just comes from just living in our culture, right? I don't care if you're atheist, Christian, or whatever you are. Living in the culture brings out so much sex negativity, which is kind of what brought me to being a sex therapist, right? And then I started talking to more like voluntary sex workers, right? Because I also was taking trainings to for sex trafficking, and what I recognized is that they were saying, well, no one would ever possibly want to choose this lifestyle, and so they were shaming sex workers,
For
and I'm
sure.
like, I'm
It's
like,
just,
yo, I don't think I like that.
yeah, it's just not true. And honestly, even in my education at Shaw, I remember doing the SAR, and I remember, in interacting with wonderful opportunities of education, and having moments of even, oh, I've never seen this side, or I've never thought of it like that,
Mm-hmm.
or because I had been so immersed in this space of danger, bad, horrible, and in my own experiences. But I was also holding my own experiences of empowerment and my own
Yeah.
experiences of like the fact, the ways that sex work helped to create opportunities where the gaps of sexual development existed for me.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't think that it's as simple as good, bad, right, wrong. I don't think it's as
Nope.
simple as one person's opinion at all, right? I think that that's actually why it's been so complicated for so long.
I absolutely do too. I absolutely do too. I think I liken it to the war on drugs, right? Like one of the things that you'll notice when you look at societies like Portugal and places that have legalized drugs, right, is that they actually have less issues with them than what we do, than what countries like ours do that have this intense war on drugs. Because here's the thing, we're kind of like humans are rebellious by nature, man. Like you tell us, hey, stay out of the cookie jar. Like 500 times a day, we're gonna go get in the cookie jar because you're telling me not to. By God, fuck you. I'm gonna go do it myself,
For sure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Definitely.
And
Just need
so, yeah, to me that's just kind of an interesting side note. Is like human psychology, we are very rebellious creatures by nature.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and I think that even like one of the things that I love about being a sex therapist now is when I work with people who are actively in sex work, one of my favorite things is just validating their experiences and helping them to learn the ways to stay safe.
Yeah.
And because sometimes there's just things you don't think about. Sometimes you have like people aren't even familiar with their own rights, and that puts people at huge dangers. And it also is one of the things I think one of the major contributors to why a lot of sex workers don't report harm that happens to them because they don't
Absolutely.
know how to do it in a way that they're not going to be more marginalized.
Well, even if you're under, because the U.S. is under just criminalization period, right? Like,
Sure.
me living in Canada, right? Like, um, we are under more of a Nordic model, so you're not necessarily charging sex workers for sex work. What you're doing is charging the people, their customers, and anybody that works with them. And the problem with that is that you can't, as a sex worker, you can't screen out your clients at that point and be safe.
Totally. Yeah.
So, but anyways, the advocacy for the sex trafficking, it's work that I admire. It's work that I think needs to happen. I definitely think that there is room for all of us to be both pro decriminalization of sex work and pro stop these fucking insane sex traffickers and smack them upside the face, right? Like, it's just that kind of thing, right?
For sure.
So tell me a little bit about restorative resilience counseling. I would love to hear a little bit about your work.
Yeah. So restorative resilience counseling was born out of the chaos really of leaving nonprofit world. I had been thinking about it for a long time. Actually, I went to school to be a counselor without the intention to be a counselor. I went to school because I had had a little scuffle with our local prosecutor's office, who had a meeting with me, and were just really bluntly asking why they should listen to me as a survivor only without a master's degree.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, I felt like I was pretty proud of myself because I used to be pretty like that would have in past years maybe created a an altercation. That did, I had my shit together a little bit, so that was nice. But I really was like, okay, fine. Like you want me to have a master's degree? Cool, let's do this. And I was just like kind of going in with this ferocity. But when I got into the program, I had this new vision of like, what would it look like to not just be doing crisis work? What would it look like to be with people for a longer journey? What would it look like to really think of what is a counseling space? Like, what are the possibilities in that space?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of all at the same time that I was thinking, okay, well, maybe there needs to be a bigger change here.
Mm-hmm.
And through that, restorative resilience counseling was born. And really, it's always been focused around this idea of truth telling. I think that after I got out of sex work myself, there were a lot of vows, there were a lot of like guideposts that I kind of put into place to keep myself in a direction of safety and health. Because the unfortunate reality was I was trafficked by some pretty heavy criminal industry kind of people that actually still chased me and hunted me down for many years after I was out. And so truth telling can be really scary, but also really important. And I started looking at things from more of a 5,000, 10,000, 30,000 foot view and thinking, wow, this is actually something that all of us have a hard time with, truth telling.
Mm-hmm.
And it kills us. And through school, I became no like really influenced by Gabor Mate's work, where he talks a lot about like ADHD and how we don't talk about it in a positive kind of way. We don't think about it particularly in a helpful way on a diagnostic category kind of focus. So I was like, kind of like, okay, he's truth telling about this in ways that the system isn't truth telling. And there's all these different people, like Resma Menachem, who is truth telling about white body supremacy. And all of these people are putting in these little bite sizes of, oh, this is how this can help your body, and this is how this can help your mind, and this is how this can help you socially. And so as restorative resilience counseling has been born, built, in transition all the time because that's kind of how it goes. Uh, yeah, I just created it. I just think about it as a space where clients are invited to truth tell to learn how to do that because I think it's a skill. Um, they're given a space where they can be unfiltered, where they don't have to be good or nice or anything, where they can fall apart and be accepted and cared for, where they can learn things that not everybody learns, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that cool because I went from working with a very specific population to now it like expanding outward. And I'm working more now with, I definitely work with survivors all the time. I definitely still get calls from those crazy like cult and ritual abuse cases where people are like, I don't know who else to talk to. And I'm like, cool, let's play. But I'm also meeting a lot of people who have chronic illness and who have systemic harms through the long diagnostic process of autoimmune disorders and being gaslit by doctors and all these kinds of things, or becoming parents, not knowing how to do that and feeling like they need to be perfect, or like it's just way more broad. And then as that's grown, as I've been focusing with clients a lot, this next season, I'm now focusing on how to create a wellness community that is safe and that is kind of has the same kind of heartbeat for clinicians coming in. Because I think when I talk
Absolutely.
to clinicians, right, when I talk to them, they're like, nobody actually gives a fuck about me, about my health, my well-being. Like, and I think that a lot of clinicians come into this work being over responsible and kind of people pleasing because of the culture that they've grown up in. And I just like have this vision for clinicians to have more power in their field and their art, to be able to envision things outside of the systemic norms and to be able to say, oh, actually, like we can do something different.
I agree. I go even further. So we always talk about like as clinicians we talk about best practice, evidence-based things like that, and the problem is that sometimes that evidence-based shit, which is great, don't get me wrong, okay, but sometimes that's not what the client needs, right?
Totally.
Sometimes the client just needs somebody to fucking talk to. Sometimes they need a therapist like me who says fuck 20 times during the session, right? Like, and says, they're doing these things, and the therapist is like, okay, so how's that shit working for you? Not so well. Maybe we try something different. Sometimes you just got to be blunt and say, you know what, that's fucking stupid shit. Let's try something different. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And
totally.
so, like my clients, like I said, I'm a sex therapist, but I work with couples and things too, just doing couples therapy. And I've had clients come in and they're, well, we're not, well, we argue and we talk over each other. I'm like, yeah, I know, I heard that shit. Like,
Yeah.
let's be real about that. How's that working for you? No, so well. Let's try some imago dialogue. That means you gotta fucking listen and repeat what the fuck they said. That way you don't fucking talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
My
blunt is
clients my
needed.
clients love me because I am so super blunt, and they'll come to me and they'll be like, dude, you don't sound like a therapist. I'm like, God, thank God.
Right.
I don't want to sound like a therapist. I want to sound like somebody who's going to help you. That's fucking my job. My
Totally.
job is to work myself out of a job.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, so yeah, like I love that, and I do think that therapists, like it's always been my belief that any therapist worth their salt also sees a therapist.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think honestly, it even goes beyond that. I think that because I've seen people that will say, "Oh yeah, I'm in therapy," but they don't. It's not what they need. It's not the type of therapy they need for the season. Or I mean, I've done things where I'm seeing a therapist for a time, and then I'm seeing a Reiki practitioner another season, and I'm like
Mm-hmm.
doing embodied somatic work in another season. Why? Because I've learned to listen to my body. I've learned to listen to what it's telling me. If I'm trying to teach my clients that, not doing it myself, then how is that going to be helpful?
You know what? Sometimes my therapy is simple. Sometimes it's just going over my buddy's house and playing a good game of D&D, right? Sometimes we process so much shit when we're playing D&D, it's unreal because we're letting those parts of ourselves out. Hence the reason the name for the podcast is Sexy Nerd, because like anything nerdy, as you can see behind me, I have comic book shit everywhere,
Awesome.
and that's part of my nerdness, right? But what I learned so when I first became a therapist, I didn't know anything about sex therapy, man. Like most of us, they don't teach that shit in grad school, man. And so what I learned was, look, you know what? Sometimes I just need to be the person somebody else can talk to. It ain't about modality. It ain't about all these different things. It's like sometimes just talking things out is all they need, right?
Yeah,
And so let me be that soft landing spot for somebody, or sometimes let me be that motherfucker that says, "What the fuck are you doing?" Right?
for sure. Yeah.
Because being realistic, I'm a recovering alcoholic,
Okay.
and I got to be honest with you. If I had somebody being really nice and shit like that, that wouldn't work for me, right? I needed that. I need a sponsor that I needed that sponsor that's like, what the fuck are you doing, man?
Hmm.
How's
Yeah,
that working out for you? Not so good. Okay, fucking do something else.
totally. I think
Anyway,
sometimes,
go ahead.
sometimes we're often waiting for that person to speak up. We're just looking for somebody to be honest and to allow us to also be human. It doesn't have to be about, I think exposure is such a beautiful tool as a therapist. Like shame doesn't have to always be bad. And I'm not saying we're not shaming people. What we're saying is like, oh, I see that. Oh, you don't think I see that? Are you okay if I see that? It doesn't matter if you're okay because I do, and I'm
Yeah.
telling you. Now, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I will tell you one of my favorite things as a sex therapist. So we talk about sensate focus as a mindfulness practice. I talk about sensate focus as exposure therapy, right?
Mhm,
And systematic desensitization to shit.
mhm,
And I have worked with clients that like literally have a uh, panic attack when they think about sex, right? And so when we get to these things, so using sensate focus as a way to do exposure therapy through that is an
mhm.
amazing process.
Yeah,
And so I think sometimes we just have to get to that place of saying, okay, so this tool is supposed to be about from this modality. Fuck that. I'm going to use it this way, right?
totally. Well, it's I when I got out of school, I did some training in creative and expressive art therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that like, the drama therapy kind of model is really about uh, seeing something and finding new ways to play with it. And I think that's very much what being a therapist is about, right? Like I think I've seen the most frustrated therapists be the ones who are trying to do everything step by step and formulaic, and it's like, no, no, no. That's just the little bit bite sized, and now you see how you can play with it. How does this work for this person and in this culture and in this body and in this with this history?
Yeah, my first degree is a film degree. Like my associates is in film. And so I have taught clients how to write screenplays and said, okay, so I want you to take your character that you're going to write is a person that has struggled and dealt with the same shit you do.
Yeah.
And I want you to write out that character and write out a few scenes and things like that with that character. And then you're going to bring it back to me. When they do that, they come with me and we read it over. We do a reading together. And I say, now imagine you're there to help them through this process. What are you
Yeah.
going to do? And
Mhm.
they're able to literally say, well, I would do this, 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 this. Okay, so do it for yourself.
Do it. Yeah. 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 It's
So
just
there's
your way in, finding a window. Hmm.
being a therapist, there's science involved, yes, but there
Yes.
is so much art and
Hmm.
creativity that if it's not involved, I don't think you're doing it right.
I agree. I also
Yeah.
think like the science only goes so far when we're thinking about embodiment. I
Yeah.
mean, I work with a lot of people with complex trauma and neurodivergence, and we can read all we want about those experiences, but everybody's experiences of embodiment in that is different.
Yep.
And everybody's shutdowns are different, and everybody's hell no's are different and very historical, like very, very connected to their own realities and story. And some of it is going to be hard to pick up on in a detailed kind of way. And so it's just like what I've found is helping people to feel safe enough to explore their body, to tell the truth about it,
Mm-hmm.
to ally with it. All of a sudden, now boundaries are possible. Now possibilities are endless, really. And I just love it. I love those epiphanies even that clients have of things that they've been doing instinctively. Like I remember when I first got into therapy, uh, which was a way too far actually. Like I was probably like just riding the wave until I was in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And the very first time I went into therapy, I remember my therapist thinking it was really interesting that I had never become a drug addict or I'd never, been a self harmer or any of these other kinds of things. And I kind of laughed and I was like, well, I had a lot of examples of what not to do growing up. So that was helpful. But
Yeah.
as he was kind of talking about the reasons why he was surprised by this, I laughed out loud and he's like, what? I was like, I'm covered in tattoos. Wouldn't you call that a variation of cutting? I was like, it kind of does the same thing in some ways. And the therapist kind of stopped and was like, huh, yeah, I guess so. And I was like, cool. Okay, well, that's interesting because I started getting tattoos pretty early in life. And
Mhm.
I had always been very consistent about it. And I do remember getting like when I would get tattoos and I'd be like, chill for like 2 weeks and be like, oh, okay. And so even those kinds of things, I have those kinds of conversations with clients and being like, what are ways that we can think about this? How can you learn about your body in a way that you can ally with it instead of harming it?
When we even go back, I even go back Freudian on that, right? Because I'm a huge, I'm a nerd, man. So Freud, one of Freud's things was sublimation, right? Which is all that is, right? Like that's literally what that is. You want to cut, go get a tattoo,
Yeah.
you know. You want to cut other people, maybe go to school to become a surgeon, you know. Like
Yeah.
there's tons of different things that you can do. Like I loved when I was growing up, I loved fighting. I fucking loved violence.
Yeah.
So instead of doing it the wrong way, I started boxing. And it
Yeah, of
was the
course.
same thing. I wanted to punch people,
Yeah,
so I did it in the healthiest way I knew how to do it, which is all
totally.
sublimation is, right? And so I think people recognize that too. I also know people who are who they would call hypersexual. To me, hypersexual people are just people with a really healthy appetite. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
But I know people who always used to feel like it was a problem, but then they got into things like doing things like burlesque and got into exotic dancing and got into writing erotica, and holy shit, their life changed. Right? It was like it was saying, "Hey, this is not a problem. This is a power I can use." I know people who are autistic, and for people like me, I look at someone like Temple Grandin, for example, right?
Hmm.
And I'm like, wow, that's fucking amazing. Look
Right.
at that system she created. Oh my God. Or I look at some of my other friends who are neurodivergent, and they're like, dude, the patterns of things that you see that neurotypical people don't see amazes me, right?
Yeah.
Do you have some issues? Yeah, so do neurotypical people. I ain't worried about that. But look at the power that you have, right?
Totally.
ADHD. I can concentrate on, or not concentrate, I can achieve multiple things at one time and
Right.
multitask.
Right.
Finishing things sometimes might be problematic, but I can definitely do these things, right? So I mean, we look at, I think that brings me into kind of my next segment with you, is like when we talk about people who are neurodivergent, there's so much shaming and stuff right now. And like even some of the stuff. So there's a big thing right now. ABA is what most people use for autistic clients. I fucking hate ABA. I'm gonna tell you, be honest. I feel like it's teaching them to mask who they are, and I don't like that. But if what we could be doing instead is teaching them how to use that neurodivergent as a power,
Hmm.
so that they feel strength behind it and not feel like they're not as good as someone else, right?
Totally. Yeah.
So I know that you do work with neurodivergent people and things like that as well. So tell me a little bit about that aspect of what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I am with you 100% on the ideas and approach to neurodivergence. I think that masking leads to burnout and worse. And I think that again, we have to be able to ally with our bodies, and that means we have to accept differences
Mhm.
as not a horrible, bad, or shameful thing. My work with neurodivergent people is actually some of my favorite because what I find, especially in my clients that have both ADHD and autism, there's this beautiful mastery in masking and in getting their needs met. But when they learn that they don't have to anymore, when they learn, I always kind of approach it from more of a values based lens, kind of ACT, and helping
Mhm.
people to identify like, well, what do you believe? What do you want? What do you need? What are your desires? I think that's really hard for a lot of people who have never had the opportunity or freedom to even name those things.
Mhm.
Uh, I work with a lot of people who, when I invite this in, it turns into a shutdown. It turns into a like I can't even verbalize. And I love being able to invite people into honoring the whole of who they are. And so even changing language, you'll hear people often say, "Well, I people just think I'm weird because I'm like, is that weird? Is weird good or bad?" And they'll be like, "Well, why are you asking me that?" Because I think a lot of people always assume that weird is bad. I'm like, well, is this weird good? Like weird different? Weird diverse? Like weird what how are we using this word? And we get down like really deep into just like the semantics sometimes because I think that we just so easily judge ourselves, point the knives at ourselves. And then also there's not a lot of self-advocacy skills because we're just looking to what everybody else wants and what everybody else's comfort level is. And I think that that actually creates a lot of vulnerability in life, not just towards burnout, but towards sexual harm, towards um, being manipulated. I think that I see so many people that have followed a path in their life for so long that is not at all reflective of who they are or who they want to be.
I
And so
like to
there's
say,
an element in it.
yeah, I like to say that normal is not a human setting; it's a setting on a washer and dryer, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't believe that there is a normal for
Right.
humans. I just don't. I think we are all, whether you're neurodiverse or neurotypical, like all of us are unique. All of us are different. No two people think 100% alike. It doesn't happen.
Totally.
And so what I like to tell clients, and I tell couples this a lot because they're like, well, this just doesn't seem like it's normal. Like I had one client, couple that was starting to wanting to open up their marriage, and it was really scary for them because it's like it's just not normal. I'm like, who fucking says? And secondly, are you a fucking appliance? Like what the fuck, right? So like, and I didn't use as much foul language on that, but it was definitely like, do you see yourself as an appliance, right? Do you see yourself as something that has a setting on it, man? Because you don't. And
Yeah.
so,
Similar things. Like I'll say, I do that to like describe binaries. I'll say,
yeah.
so we're seems like we're doing a lot of good, bad, right, wrong here. And I don't like doing that because I don't think life is a pass fail kind of thing.
Right.
And people will kind of be like, what do you mean? I'm like, look, the only things that I can think of that are legitimately going to be a pass fail in your life are a driver's test and STD check. And I was like, it's going to be yes or no, and you're going to be having good news or bad news that day.
Hmm.
Those are pretty much it. Everything else is very flexible and is very open, and you can change your mind a lot. You can adjust a lot. And I think
Yeah.
that again, but I think all of that comes from the way that many people are developed. Like we get the good, bad, right, wrong. We get the do good, bad, right, wrong kind of categories from the beginning of education, even before that, and often like parenting styles. And
Hmm.
so then we're 20 or 30 or 40 or 70 years old in a counseling session and are like, there's another way to do this. What? I don't have to limit myself to this binary.
Hmm.
No, no, you don't. And your body's gonna love it.
Well, like I think that's where we look at things too, right? Is like drug addiction, alcohol addiction, all of these things. they didn't start out as wrong. They started out as ways to cope with life.
For sure. Hmm.
And so when I talk to people who use drugs or who have struggled with addiction their whole life, I ask them or I let them know, I don't think you're bad. I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you are doing wrong. I think you are doing something that is a coping skill to you,
Hmm.
and honestly, it might be not be the most adaptive coping skill that you have because of the fact that it's harming your life, but it's not that you're doing it to be bad. It's that we need to just teach you some new ways to deal,
Right.
right? And that's it. Like you're not a horrible person because you use drugs. You're not a horrible person because you do this or that. Like let's just figure out things that can help you live your life better, right? For you. And that's why that most important question for me is how is that working for you?
For
Right?
sure.
It's not I don't care how that works for your cousin Bobby Joe. Like I don't care about any of that. Bobby Joe may be great at going to church and living that highfalutin moral life, but like for me that shit won't work.
Right.
So what works for me, right?
Right.
And so like you bring it, it's very very personal, and someone's life, and I think that's where I look at things too, is like someone's life is very important. I had clients that I've worked with that are sex workers that started out in as being trafficking victims,
Sure.
right? And they uh and they got out of trafficking, right? And they survived the trafficking, being victimized and stuff like that. But they figured out, honestly, that when they were doing these things on their own, that
Yeah.
it actually made them feel empowered.
Yeah.
And I also have clients that were raped or that were sexually assaulted, that one of their favorite scenes in BDSM is consensual non consent. And a
Sure.
lot of that is about they are taking that power back. And
Totally.
so people don't get that.
Yeah.
And because that doesn't work for them. But if it
Sure.
works for you,
Right.
that's all I care about.
Right. There's no universalized good, bad,
No,
right, wrong. It can't.
absolutely.
Humanity is not that simple.
No. I wish it was. That would make things so much. No, I don't. Then I'd get bored. I get
Yeah.
bored really easy.
Yeah. But also another thing with the neurodivergent thing that I think is really another part that I love is I don't think that many people get taught on a sexual development level how important environment is
Hmm.
to engaging sex in both safe and fully present ways.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think that that's even teaching that like as a neurodivergent person myself, I have had to learn that not everybody, experiences life the way I do, and that I have to adjust my own boundaries. I have to be able to call the shots in ways that other people might not be
Yeah.
used to. And I think that I love that, where it's kind of like when you're thinking about a safe sexual environment for you or a productive sexual environment for yourself, an environment where you're going to have freedom to explore, freedom to heal, freedom to try new things, to adventure. Um, what do you need? Does it need to be really quiet? Does there need to be music going on? Does there need to be some level of danger in the room? Does
Hmm.
there need to be, like finding all these different things and normalizing that? And I just, again, I think that I have such a heartbreak for the the reality of so many families never talking to their children about sex, never talking to
Yeah.
children about their bodies, and then we grow up into adults and we're just like, I don't know, or afraid, or like just hiding. I think that it would be really cool if exposure to the just so many more normal and like real experiences sexually would be like, I don't know. I just think it would be really cool to see on earlier levels of development. And I think that when I talk with and engage my neurodivergent clients around sex, it's often having to kind of go back and look at what we're never allowed to do, or the bads, the big bads, um, and then being able to untangle those and being able
I
to
think
say, who says?
I think in a perfect world, when you're younger, you should have. I feel like maybe high school. I may not drop it on like elementary age kids, right? But I think like by high school, I think they should do SARS, like what we have to as sex therapists,
Please. Yes, I'm 100% for that. Yes.
right? I think
Because
that would be so amazing.
we have so many biases by then. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be uh moved brought to the edge of your discomfort and to wonder why and to have safe spaces. I used to do trainings actually in health classes. I used to do these health classroom takeovers for junior high and high school. And
Mm-hmm.
it was about around sexual exploitation prevention, but a lot of the focus was about choice and consent. A lot of it was
Yeah.
about gender roles and how they can kind of messify the whole situation. And I used to love doing that so much because you'd get these kids in these classes that would be like kind of paralyzed at first, being like, this is the most information we've ever gotten about our bodies and about sex and about relationships ever in our whole lives at once. And it's only
Mm-hmm.
like an hour each day for 2 days. And then towards the end of the session, they would be like, why is nobody talking to us about this? What is going on? And I'm like, yes, please ask
Yeah.
those questions. Go break down some
Absolutely.
doors, please.
Absolutely. I think that's kind of part of like so I don't work a lot with kids anymore. I used to. My whole job probably a few years ago was pretty much just working with kids with behavioral issues. You know. And for those who are just listening, I did put up the air quotes, guys, okay? Um because honestly, I think a lot of behavioral issues are really just them trying to, or just kids trying to do what biologically and developmentally they're supposed to do, and that's challenge life, right?
Yeah,
That's how we
for
learn, man. Like
sure.
anyway, I could get on a whole tangent about that shit because like you got all he won't do this. He's always back talking. Okay, how much do you know about child development? How
Right.
much do you know about like lifespan development? Let's maybe instead of us challenging them real quick, let's challenge some of your ideas as a parent,
Yeah.
right? And let's teach you a little bit, right? Anyways, but yeah, I think high school years and even probably junior high years would be a perfect time to implement that kind of sex education. I think one of the easiest things that I found when I was working with teenagers, and I had a few that their parents swore that they were sex addicts or porn addicts and shit, which really
Yeah.
I won't get into my whole thing about porn addiction, sex addiction. I think it's a bunch of bullshit. I do think that you can have out of control behaviors, things that you're
Or,
not like. I absolutely agree with that. It's not an addiction, but anyway,
yeah.
um, but one of the things that I worked with them on was consent. And when we talk about consent, like that's one of the most important things for me because consent is only happening if you're getting a hell yeah. Not
Yeah.
just a yeah, but a hell yeah. Right? Otherwise it's coercion or it's assault, right? Like if you're not getting that fuck yes, I want this, then like it's not consent, right? Like I don't agree. I don't think that willy nilly. Oh, I guess we can do that. I don't. That's not consent because that's still not something you really want.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and
And
so
when I was teaching kids that, like that was part of our method in the classroom. And I tied it to the fight, flight, freeze, appease kind of
yeah,
model. And nobody was ever talking about appease. It's
yeah,
like, so what happens if you say, if your mind says no, but your mouth says yes?
yeah.
And you see all of these kids just being like, oh shit, that happened to me. Oh shit, that's happened. Like, mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
let's teach you about your nervous system. It's so important. If we
It
don't have
is.
this information, we're just miscategorizing the things. Yeah. Consent is
One
so
we
important.
have to. I think we have to teach people that in more cases than just sex, though, too, right? Like there's times when I've worked at agencies before, right? That wanted me to do a note that I know damn well would have been unethical.
Yeah.
And I straight up told them, no, can't do that.
Hmm.
Whereas I know coworkers that actually did those notes and then felt like shit about it because they knew it was unethical. And I was like, look, if they fire me for being ethical,
Right.
cool, cool.
It's an extra
But
point.
I'm not going to just do something
Right.
to just appease them, right? If they're doing things that are unethical, I don't want to be part of that anyways. And
Right.
so in that case, I ended up reporting that agency because like those are unethical practices. I'm not trying to have that.
Totally.
And but I think that it happens in all aspects of our life, man. Like my wife, she's constantly, "Hey, we should go to a craft show." I'm like, "You can go to a craft show. Have fun with that shit."
Yeah.
Right? But there are also times where I'm like, fuck yeah, I want to spend some time with you. I'll go to the craft show because I love spending time with you, and that's cool. So
Right.
it just depends on the day, right? Like so, and it can always change. That's what I love about the T video. Have you seen the T video?
I don't. I'm not sure. I don't think so.
So it's this you can get it, you can find it on YouTube, but they use tea as a stand-in for sex. So what if
Oh.
somebody offers you tea and you don't
Mhm.
want tea? Well, it's not right to pour the tea down their throat when they're asleep. You know, like that is one of the best consent videos I've ever seen in my life because it's like, yeah, yeah, no, dude, I get it. If I was asleep and somebody poured tea down my throat, I would probably be really upset.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
I
know,
love resources
so
like that. To go has resources like that too, where it's just the little cartoons, right? And it just makes it
yeah,
super cool. And you're like, okay, thanks. Thanks for that.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you do all these different things, man. I can tell you as a therapist, I use YouTube so much in my therapy practice. It's unreal because there's always really good stuff out there, man. You just got to find it. I do a lot of research on it and stuff like that. Anyway, so we got to the so the consent is really important. So another piece I want to talk to you about because I know that you have put a big focus now on trying to bring more of this to clinicians because we talk all day long about our clients. We talk all day long about trying to help clients and things like that. But kind of like I tell people all the time, right? You can give people a drink of water if your cup is full, but if you have an empty cup, you can't give them shit, right?
Right.
So we as therapists, like, we need to be able to have full cups and
Hmm.
not empty cups in order to do our jobs properly. So talk to me about, like, in your work, like, what do you do to kind of help therapists with attaining that full cup? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So when I was an advocate, one of my practices, and this was before I knew I was, so I have ADHD and autism, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know this at the time. But I used to have this practice when my body would get stressed, where I would come in and I would sit. I had this like cubicle kind of area where there was like 3 or 4 desks, and I would just lay in the middle of the floor. And my staff always knew that if I'm laying there, they can talk to me. They just need to walk around me. Just be careful not to trip. I'm not moving. And I did this for years.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really cool to see that how they got kind of used to just this need for me grounding, but also it became normal. It became accept like just like, oh, that's what's happening. And then little by little, I started seeing them finding their own ways that they needed to do that very
Mm-hmm.
thing. I was going on walks to the park, or maybe sometimes laying down like I was, or whatever. And so when I'm thinking about supporting clinicians, I think the very first thing that's the most important is that I'm modeling some version of what I'm talking about, so that I always have examples. So I always have like, this is what it looks like for me, but invite them to be like, what does this look like for you?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be completely different. And it could be something that doesn't even work for you at all. And you try to like find something different, right? So it's very kind of like creative and open and inclusive of the whole of the person. But also, right now, I also invite and have worked with a number of people just in clinical supervision.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the way I experienced clinical supervision, like in my associate hours, was fine, but it felt very standardized. It felt very flat in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I do clinical supervision is I start by getting to know the clinician. And I
Yep.
don't just know them professionally, I get to know them on personal levels. I want to know about as much as they're willing to share with me
Yeah.
about their life history, like passions, like anything,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that that helps me to really format a clinical supervision experience that is very particular to them.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and and then I offer focused clinical supervision around areas of specialization that generally people aren't getting taught in school and aren't even able to find CEUs on. So, how do we identify sexual exploitation and human trafficking? How do we differentiate sexual exploitation and human trafficking from consensual sex work? How do we identify our own biases in these kinds of things? How, like, what's my job and what's their job, whoever they are in the room?
Mhm.
Because sometimes it's therapists, it's our clients, sometimes it's our family, sometimes it's uh, the mayor, like whoever we're engaging with.
Yeah.
And I think that I like to think about things not just from a framework of what we're doing with our clients, but what are we doing in all parts of the focused work as a therapist. Sometimes we're public speaking. Sometimes we are um, tapping into, authoring and research and other kinds of things. So thinking about things from a, is my cup full? Am I checking in with myself in all of these places? Um, I also, in the same way that I work with my clients, it's very direct. It's very, uh, did you notice that thing that you did there? Or why is that happening? I wonder, like, what's going on there? Um, to really bring out a sense of self awareness
Mhm.
and a sense of ownership. I love, my very favorite thing in developing therapists and social workers and advocates and any kind of helper is really that it's identity development for them. Like, tell me your why. I want to know, not as a critique, but as, like, I'm curious and I want you to feel confident and stable in your why. Because the more confident and stable you are in your why, the more confident and stable you're going to be everywhere else. The more ability you're going to have to be able to say that's not for me and this is. Um, and for me, it's also about offering experiential education for those who want it.
Mhm.
So when I, an example, when I sometimes when I teach people or when I'm supervising over like sexual exploitation experiences, and I know that this therapist has never been in particular sex work environments, I might open that up for them to say, "Hey, do you want to go visit a strip club with me? Do you want to get the feel of this? Do you want to know what's happening in these places? Do you want to? Like, I can talk to you about it, but it is different when you're there. It's
Yeah.
different when you feel the energy, when you see the things happening, and even get the ability to say, oh, that's not what I thought, or oh, that's uh the thing I saw in the movies is not the way it was here. And it's like, yeah, like, let's get into the real.
Yeah.
um yeah, I just love, like, again, it's always about embodied. It's like, how do we get you in a place where you're not just making things up, where you're not just borrowing from other practitioners, or where you're not just borrowing from other researchers or models, but that this becomes your dance, this becomes your
Mhm.
voice, this becomes your, like, something that you can own, um, and that you have boundaries in. Because I think that so often I see so many people that are just at the very edge of burnout all the time, and I think that that's just one of the most tragic realities, because this work can be done very well in boundaried and healthy and stable ways. Um, but we have to have a sense of what our values are and what, like, where we're headed and what our hell no's are, and what we stand for. And I don't think that that is often. I don't see a lot of therapists coming out of school with those things well established.
Well, I think too, though, like, first off, most therapists don't come out of school thinking they're going to make millions and millions of dollars. Like, if you
Of
do, then
course,
you probably shouldn't have went to school to be a therapist, really.
for sure, for sure.
Um, but I think too, most therapists, when we go to school, it's because we want to help people, right?
Yeah,
It's definitely because we want to help people. The problem is they don't in grad school teach us to value ourselves,
right.
right? Like, They teach us that they often teach us that, oh, you can't charge that much because your client can't afford it. And it's like, look, I get that we need to be able to have more access, right? And I agree with that.
Mhm.
But like, you can't devalue yourself,
Yeah.
because you still have to make a living that is going to help you to live in a way that you are actually able to do
Mhm.
the things that you need to do, right?
Right. Totally.
And so that's one thing I tell new therapists all the time is like, you want to help people, but if you're not, but if your whole life is super, super struggly, right?
Yeah.
If you're struggling with everything, how are you going to help other people if you're still it's basic Maslow, right? Like, if I am not having the security needs met,
Hmm.
I can't really give much to anybody else.
Yeah. It's just chasing
And
fantasy. Yeah.
yeah, but you do a lot of really interesting work from what we've talked about, and I've been very thankful and blessed to be able to kind of reach out and be able to talk to you back and forth, like over Facebook for the last little while and things like that. So I do appreciate that. But I think the work that you're doing is amazing, and I hope that you are able to um, bridge a gap that oftentimes is missing for a lot of us therapists, right?
Hmm.
And but I also hope that you're able to bridge that same gap for yourself.
Definitely. Yeah. I definitely think that my hope in this whole journey is to create a vision for a model in this work where there's always enough time for real life. There's always enough time for adventure. Um, and there's always enough time for learning something new. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about this field in and of itself. If you think that you're never gonna like that you're gonna get to an expert level, then you're wrong because this field is all about learning always. It's about changing your mind always. It's about reconsidering and restructuring always. And I think that sometimes people get caught up in that though. And I just want there to be some kind of balanced invitation to like, don't forget about your real life though. Like I went on that, you saw, I went on the adventure, the family adventure to BC recently and did some really fun things and had just like a wonderful time. And I think that I want to see therapists who are actually taking time off and doing things like that and who are not just talking about it
Yeah.
and who are living full and whole lives while also helping the few that they're able to support in the seasons that they're able to do that.
And I'm so lucky, man. You know, I, so I'm just a standard Oklahoma boy that is getting to live his dream to live in Canada, right?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of one of the most amazing things is that, like, growing up in Oklahoma, I was like, yeah, I might do a few things or here and there, but I was really fortunate in the aspect of, I got to live in Kennewick, Washington, or Tri Cities, what they call it, right?
Yeah.
Um, I got to do that. I got to do so many different things, and then I got to come up here and live up here, and there's a certain point in which it's like, how lucky do I get to be? And then, I have an amazing son who has an amazing boyfriend, and they live in Oklahoma, and I worry about them daily because not sure how safe it is down there right now. But not to get into politics. I promised we wouldn't, so I won't. But you know, I have been fortunate and blessed, and the funny thing is I've been broke most of my life, man. Like, but I'm okay in that. I'm okay with being broke. It doesn't bother me because because I still experience life.
Yeah.
Like, and so it's kind of one of those things of, you know, I've been real fortunate in getting to experience the things that I've always wanted to experience, and
Hmm.
to live in a country that is not my country of origin,
Hmm.
and to experience what it's like to be able to take those risks. Because
Right.
I tell people all the time, risk is not life without risk. I'm not sure how worth it is, right?
Right.
tongue tired today. You know,
Yeah,
I'm not real sure how great life is if you don't take risks.
I agree with you on that. I think that I've always been the kind of person that values risk and that likes challenge and that leans into the tension. But I don't think everybody's like that, and it's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
I do wish for though that for those that don't yet that there would be an increased valuation of what risk can give what and safe risk, safe enough risk. I'm not talking about like let's jump off of something high and see if it works. Like I'm talking about like this thing I've never done that's a little bit scary and what could happen? What good could happen here?
yeah.
Um,
Though
yeah,
not not this year, because this last year they had the 10th. I think the 10th anniversary Shaw Sexological Conference, and I didn't get to go to that one,
yeah,
but I did go last year, right? So, and I have I've always been scared of airplanes, right? Always. But I really wanted to go to that.
yeah,
So I got my happy ass on an airplane.
yeah.
And the first leg of the trip from Portland, Maine to Baltimore, I was white knuckling it most of the time.
Mhm.
The rest of the trip from Baltimore to Denver, I was looking out the window like, "Wow, that's cool." And then back home, I was like, "Wow, that's cool." And the last leg of the trip to from I think we landed in Chicago and then came in to Portland again. And during that trip, the northern lights could be seen from my airplane window.
So
And I
beautiful.
was like, I'm not afraid of airplanes anymore,
That's
right?
wonderful.
Like I'm not scared. I took a risk. I was petrified of airplanes. I took a
Yeah,
risk. And my life is it's so much better now because I know now that I won't avoid travel by airplane anymore. If I want to take an airplane, I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about taking that risk. Does that mean something bad couldn't happen? Fuck, something bad could happen if I walk outside my front door.
right.
But I am not petrified to a level that I won't even try it.
Yeah,
And that's what I want from my clients. If there's anything I want from my clients, it's just to get you to a place that you don't have to be petrified
right.
of
Yeah.
taking the risk.
I had a similar fear of airplanes, and I always attribute one trip I took with my daughter as the thing that healed it. And it
Right?
was very similar. Like when you're with your kids, you don't want to look petrified because
Yeah. Yeah.
for their really. And so I was like, cool. My daughter wanted to go. She's obsessed with zoos and seeing
Mm.
wild animals, and I was like, okay. And she wanted to see a cheetah, and we don't have cheetahs in our zoos here. So closest zoo that I could find that had a cheetah in it was San Diego. I was like, okay, that's a
One of the
pretty.
best zoos.
I mean, I agree. And so I was like, all right, that's not a long flight. Like it'll be okay. But I remember going through like TSA and all the things and feeling like I was sweating and being like, okay, we're gonna do this. I'm taking my daughter on this trip that I know was safe enough, but I got to actually like make it look like I think that. And when we got on the plane, it was so funny. Every single step of the whole process was magic for her. She was about 6 years old, and she's just like, "Oh my gosh, what is going on there? Oh my gosh, what's going on there?" I look out the window, like, "Who's that? What are their flags? What's happening?" All the questions, all the things, and I just was talking her through it. I was like, "Oh," and I remember this woman that was sitting next to us, and eventually I turned and I said, "I am so sorry," because my daughter was just talking, 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 talking nonstop the whole flight. And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And she said, "Are you kidding me? This is the most fun flight I've ever had in my whole life. This is just so fun watching her little magic and you just responding to all the things." And I'll never forget when we landed, I thought, wow, I wasn't even panicked that whole time.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I can do this? What? And ever since then, it's been fine, right? It's just getting out there. It's just doing the thing.
Well, I think wrapping up, I think the thing that we can say about like your work and the things that you do and even the airplane incidents and things like that is recognizing that we can overcome the fear of being ourselves.
Yeah.
We can overcome the fear of not being enough.
Hmm.
And all we have to do is just take the risk of becoming more,
Right.
or take the risk of saying, I don't need to become more. I am enough.
I'm good. Yeah. Just living in authenticity
Yeah.
as if it's
I
a
like that.
jest, but learning to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We do that, the more freedom, the more peace,
Yeah.
life worth living.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much. This has been the Sexy Nerd Podcast, and I will be doing my best to make sure that I have links for Miss Victoria and things like that in the show notes. So just bear with me. And as soon as I get that put on, I'll do that and I'll get this episode put up. And I wish you guys luck. And it was a fun show. So thank you so much for joining me, Victoria. I appreciate it so, so much.
Yeah. Thank you.